What is the most ridiculous thing someone has done at one of your ATMs?
Probably the most ridiculous thing someone has done in our ATM is
Hi, my name is Ty. This is episode 1 of Behind the Breakthrough. Today is a very special guest to commemorate the first ever series that will start hopefully a long-running series of showing you real people with real stories of real success. Now, today I have a very good friend that I want to introduce a lot of you to. It's the Unbank CEO and a personal best friend of mine, Emilio. Welcome in.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ty.
So today is a special setting for us because Unbank just had its holiday party, and this commemorates a little over how many years now of Unbank's continuity? About 13 years going, 11 years here?
Going on 11. Yeah, so
11 years.
April of this year was our 10-year anniversary.
Now, we're going to get into how the heck you've been in Bitcoin ATMs for over 10 years when nobody knew what Bitcoin was back in the day. But first, let's talk about your breakthrough. Can we talk about a little about the success of Unbank? How many ATMs are out there in the United States right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a little over 830 throughout Unbank as well as Stack in the states that we operate in. And so
830 ATMs.
Yeah.
Probably becomes a headache.
It's a huge headache.
And we're going to get into the headache shortly, no doubt. So I want to talk about a little of some numbers. How much revenue was done last year by Unbank and Generation?
Yeah, so we had a little over 70 million in sales.
I mean, still an absolutely insane generation. And now we're going to go through the whole behind the scenes. Like, how did we get to this point? And I want to start all the way back to the first day you heard about Bitcoin. What was it back in the day? What was Bitcoin actually trading at? Let's start there.
So initially, when I first found out about Bitcoin, it was a couple of dollars. I think it was around $3 or $4. I didn't understand it. I just knew that it was just an online currency and the value fluctuated wildly.
Back then
it would have insane swings. There would be some days it would go, down 80% and next day it's up 200%, right?
And that leads me to say, you found out about Bitcoin, probably some friends and stuff at school, but how did anyone get their hands on it back then? Was it even an easy operation?
It was extremely sketchy. So the way I first got my Bitcoin was on a website called Local Bitcoin.
A lot of us remember those meetups.
Yeah, so it was cash in person. I waited a while to get it. I ended up getting it around $12 to $13. I met up with someone at the local public library in Schenectady, New York.
So you're going to the public library, meeting up with a random person that you maybe have phone number of, email, find them at the library, and then we commence a transaction.
Correct.
What does this transaction look like at a library?
It was very weird. There was a stench of homeless people that were sleeping on the seats in the library, and I handed the guy $150 cash. I didn't really know what to expect, and he released the escrow, and I got 12 Bitcoin transferred to my wallet on Local Bitcoins.
And where were we setting Bitcoin back then? I mean, mainly what exchanges were running? Do we have maybe BitMEX back then, or what was a major exchange back in 2011, 2013?
Yeah, thankfully it wasn't BitMEX. It was Mt. Gox, although, obviously it failed and I ended up losing a lot of Bitcoin eventually on there.
So a true OG, you can say that you were affected by Mt. Gox.
Yeah, I lost 100 Bitcoin in Mt. Gox.
Now, that 100 Bitcoin we already know, and we'll talk about this a little later. Have you received any type of reparations from the government? I know it's been seized back again, and they have it. Has this ever come back to you? You've gotten...
So I ended up selling my stake for the Mt. Gox bankruptcy proceedings to a company called Fortress. They're a private equity fund, and I sold it back in, I think it was April of 2020. I really needed the cash to inject it into Unbank.
What did you get about cash on dollar, about maybe a 60% return?
No, it was like, I want to say it was like 14 cents on the dollar.
Cheap.
Yeah. So, I mean, they got a great deal, but I needed the cash, so I sold it.
Yeah. And that leads us into this point where, like, in 2020, you're running this massively successful Bitcoin ATM company, but like, at what point was starting an ATM even a vision of yours? I mean, you went to college, correct?
Yeah. I went to university at a small private school called Marist in Poughkeepsie, New York.
What were you studying back then?
I was studying information technology and a little computer science.
So not too far off of where you ended up landing. I mean, information technologies and the blockchain isn't too far off. Do you think that going to college maybe stunted your entrepreneurship or maybe helped you a little bit with some connections you had?
I think it helped for the most part. I mean, there was some aspects that hindered it because I had a lot of classes and I had to maintain, above a D average.
Okay.
So
did you end up dropping out, or you graduated?
I finished. Yeah, I finished. I think it kind of made me a little bit more hungry.
After finishing college?
I would say, because I realized that, the path that they were setting me on was going to be a path where I would have to work for someone. And, my personality is, I can't work for anyone except myself.
I know that all too well. At what point did you actually think that, hey, I'm going to try something? I'm going to suspect that Bitcoin ATMs was not your first venture. You probably tried several other things, but you ended up buying Bitcoin online, maybe using it as an investment vehicle in the beginning. But what point did the idea of a physical ATM sprout in your mind?
Yeah, so I ended up buying Bitcoin on local Bitcoins, and I ended up selling Bitcoin on local Bitcoins.
So you became a vendor.
Yeah, I wanted to arbitrage, the rate and spread adoption for Bitcoin. Initially, I thought that I would be able to cycle the money fast enough so that I could beat the market. It doesn't work like that.
It's not successful in that venture there.
I mean, it's successful. It just, holding Bitcoin and maybe sitting on your ass and smoking weed is actually a better option.
I think if you're buying Bitcoin at $10 compared to 100,000 today, probably the best option. Yeah, definitely. Now, that's over 13 years ago now, and we're looking at a landscape where crypto has been fully adopted. Now, you being involved in Bitcoin back then probably turned a lot of people off and probably thought it was a scam, or like, what is this thing that you're talking about? Did you have a lot of friends who maybe didn't understand what it was and kind of question what you were doing during that time?
Actually, I had a really great group of friends. They understood Bitcoin. They knew it wasn't a scam. I surrounded myself with people that were intelligent, people that, thought that Bitcoin was a scam. I didn't associate with.
That's amazing. So you kept on the path. You were a Bitcoin purist. You believed in technology, and anyone that didn't, you just didn't waste any time.
Yeah, I just realized that their IQ was just not up to par.
I think so. Considering where we're at today, I think we know who the winner was in that case. Now, you had all these friends that were complete crypto enthusiasts and, of course, Bitcoin enthusiasts, but you were the one that went the ATM route. What was that deviation? Was it the fact that you were selling Bitcoin at libraries with homeless surrounding you that pushed you to want to start a physical ATM where you didn't have to spend your time going back and forth from libraries? What was this event?
Yeah, so I mean, I really liked selling Bitcoin to other people. I just didn't like meeting up with other people. So I wanted a physical presence to simplify and automate the transaction, to make it safe. Also, I thought the physical presence of an ATM would put people at ease and kind of legitimize Bitcoin. I think I did a good job of that.
I think so too. And if I'm not mistaken, were you the first ever Bitcoin ATM to be placed in New York City?
Yeah, I was. Although the first ATM to be installed was actually in Albany, and that was by me. A couple months later, I installed it in West Village in Manhattan.
That's absolutely incredible. Now, I want to backtrack just slightly. Getting to the point of selling and being a vendor on localbitcoins.com to having your own physical machines is quite the leap. I mean, we would have thought a lot more people would have done this, but obviously you were the one to do it. Who helped you get to this point? Was it a manufacturer that was doing it in other states or maybe another country that you had contacted? What was the process of actually buying maybe your first machine and sourcing the software for this?
Yeah, so I initially went through a company called Lamasu. They're still around. I purchased it with Bitcoin, which was pretty cool. They're based in Portugal, although the founders are from New Hampshire, from the Manchester area. Great people. Ultimately, I had to switch providers to a company called General Bytes based out of Prague in Czech Republic.
Okay. How long do you think you used Lamasu for? I mean, it was their first ever taste of the ATM space. Obviously, didn't last too long. You probably used them for a few years.
Yeah, I used them for 3 years, but I realized that the software wasn't something that I could scale with, which was unfortunate. Also, the machines were really heavy and hard to install.
And this was a solo man job during that time. Did you have any partners that maybe were on this journey with you in the beginning, or was it just Emilio?
Yeah, initially I did have a couple partners. One fizzled out very quickly.
We'll get into that.
We had a disagreement and ended up going sour. Another lasted for maybe 7-8 months before that ended up going sour as well.
So a lot of entrepreneurial experience in a pretty much brave new world of cryptocurrency that nobody else had experienced. And the one thing I want to ask you is, did you have doubts about this job that you're on taking, starting ATMs, or did you have full hope the entire time? And did you have the support of your family?
Yeah, I had the support of my mother, which was really cool. I didn't have doubts at the time. I was really young. I was full of energy. I was ambitious.
Time for risk.
Yeah, I didn't have any doubts.
That's amazing.
I didn't think that it would be a risky venture.
So there was no plan B to the ATMs. It was, we're going to go full force into this and plant these all over the US.
Yeah. I would say if you start a business, there should be no plan B. I also think that you shouldn't have doubts. If you have doubts, then maybe you shouldn't be running a business.
I absolutely love that. Now, going off of key business methodologies and great advice to entrepreneurs, what's one thing you would say to an entrepreneur today trying to get into the crypto space, maybe even Bitcoin ATMs? Do you think it's too oversaturated? We've talked to drop shippers before, and maybe the space is too oversaturated and they don't actually have space for any new competition.
Yeah, it's completely oversaturated. I would not recommend someone trying to start a Bitcoin ATM business. It's not going to work out. You're not going to have banking. Regulators are going to terrorize you. It's going to be an awful experience.
So when you start these ATMs, you obviously needed someone to process these transactions way back in the early 2010s. Did you have a bank at that period that wanted to work with you, or did we go through hoops to go from bank to bank to bank? Because we know now that financial institutions aren't exactly adept to onboarding cryptocurrency companies.
Yeah, it was a complete nightmare. And if I could do it over, I wouldn't do it over.
You wouldn't do it over?
Absolutely not. There's always the sunken cost fallacy. And I think, I realized that I just gone too deep and I just had to continue. There was no way for me to escape, even though I wanted to.
That's powerful to say that. So although you love the idea of the business and the trajectory, it did become something that you were too far gone in.
Yeah, it was an incredible nightmare. I went through 16 different banks. I personally can't hold credit cards with most of the major banks, except for a few. I can't do Zelle. Zelle is something that I've never been able to do. It's very popular now. It wasn't back when I first tried it, but it's something that I'll never be able to utilize.
So even though you were one of the frontiermen on the forefront of the crypto revolution, you also had a pretty adverse effect on your personal finances with traditional financial institutions. So you took the risk of being banned from these banks, these credit unions, to go full on in crypto and start this business, even though you may have not wanted to. Do you find any sort of admirability in that and like sense of confidence that you helped the crypto revolution in the early days push forward by putting a physical machine across the United States?
I don't really think about it like that, but, I guess I did. Yeah, I don't feel really good about it, but I guess, that's how it turned out to be.
That's how it turned out. I mean, was the idea in the beginning for these ATMs wasn't essentially to help the underserved to these financial institutions that inevitably underserved yourself, but it was to provide a segue for people to use cash to buy Bitcoin when the only other option is libraries. Do you think that your ethos for Unbank has changed over the years into a better brand image than maybe just serving those who want Bitcoin online and maybe just helping those that want a better way to transact money online?
Yeah, so I think that's where we're leaning towards now. For a long time, I've been wanting to start a mobile application to offer additional services besides the typical one that we've been offering for 10 years now, which is Cash the Bitcoin. We now provide services with large banks like Green Dot, NCR, to allow people to purchase Bitcoin with cash at a CVS or Rite Aid. We also allow them to sell their Bitcoin and withdraw cardless through a cash code. 26,000 ATMs throughout the US.
Wow. So first off, what you're saying now is there are financial institutions kind of warming up to this idea of crypto. Do you think it has anything to do with the price of Bitcoin and the craze that it's placed in the markets? Or is it, what would you say the reason for that is?
I don't think it's the price of Bitcoin. I just think that financial institutions realize that they're missing out on a large segment of possible markets and services that they can't offer themselves, but maybe a third party like Unbank could offer.
Wow, I love that. Do you think being a cryptocurrency business owner and one that's been around for a long time, that there's been a little bit too much scrutiny on businesses like your own that is just trying to help the underserved from traditional financial institutions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been berated by a lot of different politicians. Personally, we received a love letter from 7 Democratic senators in September.
Any call outs?
Elizabeth Warren was one of those senators, as well as the majority whip at the time from Illinois. I can't remember his name, but...
Wow. So it does look like the markets are warming up to the idea of your business, but do you think, and are you ever frightened by this idea that maybe the exact offering of your company could be offered by someone like Chase Bank in the future and completely destroy the business model?
No, I don't think Chase Bank would ever venture into this avenue.
I think that's always been a question from a lot of older people in the market who kind of don't understand what Bitcoin yet is. And maybe they still don't want to buy it because they don't exactly understand these third-party services like your own. But would you say that a lot of your customers, could be these older, people that are being serviced and actually are looking to get their hands on Bitcoin?
Yeah, a lot of them are. We provide customer service over the phone, and we teach people how to create crypto wallets.
That's amazing, because it can be complicated. And to be fair, one of the big problems of the business model could be just teaching people, what is Bitcoin and why do I even want to buy it? Why is this machine in the grocery store down the street? Do you guys find a lot of calls like that on a daily basis?
Yep. About maybe 10 to 30 calls a day about teaching people how to use cryptocurrency, teaching them how to create a wallet, back up their seed phrase.
Now, this is incredible. You've gone from buying Bitcoin at libraries at $13 a Bitcoin in the early 2010s to hosting a plethora of ATMs over the last decade. Now, throughout that decade, I want to talk about some of your partners and business relationships you've had, especially with maybe some of the partnerships that dissolved, and kind of giving a little bit of insight to anyone else out there who's running a business with a partner, is having difficulties. How did you deal with these, and can you describe the situations that you ran into?
Wow, that's a great question. So initially, to all the entrepreneurs out there, I would recommend not having a business partner if at all possible. It usually never works out. It's like a marriage, but in this case, there's a marriage with no love. So it's very hard to make it work.
Let's talk about, you said you had 2 business partners.
Three.
So we had 3. Let's talk about business partner number 1. We'll give him the alias Bob. So Bob was business partner number 1. What ended up happening with the situation?
It was it lasted very, very small time.
So 7 months, you said?
No, this one was even less.
Even less.
So we got to the part where we purchased the ATM together. It was in progress to be shipped from Portugal to the US. And we found out that, the business partner was stealing money from the company bank account to fund his lifestyle.
Okay, so we had some theft with the first one. I think this is an obvious point of dissolving the relationship. So this one was probably dissolved fairly easily. Maybe no legal action had to be taken on this part.
Nope.
So we had a clean exit on Bob, and now we have business partner number 2. We'll call him call him Atlas. Give him a little bit better name. Was Atlas's relationship any better than Bob's? And
Atlas is a very intelligent guy. He went to school with me. He was an exceptional developer. He went on to work at many companies like Amazon, Cisco. He's just a great guy. Unfortunately, I just don't think our personalities mesh too well. He ended up doing something pretty immature. We were running this company out of an apartment that we shared. One day I came back from servicing some of the machines, and he was gone. He ended up stealing my credit card and buying a first-class ticket back to Miami.
Got it. Okay, so he fled New York, went back to Miami, and this probably dissolved the relationship as you called, maybe no answers, and you decided, well, I guess we're just not partners anymore. Was there any conclusion to this, or?
There was a conclusion. He sent me an email apologizing, which, I believe that he was, honest and I'm not finding the word for it, but I believe he really did mean his apology.
I like that. So it looks like Atlas and yourself didn't exactly have an explosive ending to the relationship.
Yeah, no, not really. I still think he's incredibly intelligent. I just don't think that, he's capable of running his own company. I think it was too stressful for him. There was a lot of unknowns. I think his personality is better fit to work for someone else. And kind of have those problems be solved by someone other than himself.
So at this point, we have 2 strikeouts, Bob and Atlas, but you go for a third one. Let's talk about the third one. We'll give him the name Derek. So Derek's our third one today, and 3 strikes, you're out. Derek obviously doesn't work out, but I want to hear about Derek's relationship and maybe how it could have been better than both Bob and Atlas. And was it? If it wasn't,
so Derek was also someone I went to school with. He was my best friend for a number of years in school, and we continued to be a relationship outside of school. He initially worked for Fidelity. He saw that I was doing great with my business. I wanted to expand my business, and I needed his help.
okay.
He offered, great help. I just think he wasn't super motivated, and he didn't have that drive in him that I did. So it was kind of an uneven partnership. I offered to buy him out, and he took that really the wrong way. And he ended up one day just going to all of our ATMs and stealing all the cash.
Got it. So Derek had access to the ATMs. He's a partner. He worked at Fidelity before. And he goes to your ATMs and steals your funds. Now, we've had a problem with stealing before with Atlas, who stole your credit cards. Now, he's stealing the funds. Where does he go after he steals these funds? Is he leaving the country? What is the goal here?
It was incredible. It was during the pandemic. Everything was locked down. So he picked the week that everything got locked down. He
was strategic with it.
It was very good timing. I think he was also just scared for the political climate and COVID in general.
Okay.
But I think that set him over the edge. So he absconded with around $250,000 in cash. He went back to his apartment in New Hampshire, and he hid there with his girlfriend up until the FBI came knocking.
So we have $250,000 stolen from physical ATMs during COVID. FBI gets involved, I'm assuming reports from yourself and FDIC insurance with some of the financial institutions you worked with. What's the conclusion? Does Derek give the money back? Are we going through a legal lawsuit here? Does he apologize like Atlas did? What's the lesson with Derek?
No, I haven't heard from Derek since, I ended up having to sue him in civil court. It was just a lot quicker than all of these agencies that were struggling with COVID. No one wanted to work. No one wanted to prosecute. It was actually quite funny. We settled the matter about 9 months after, he stole the money. And then 3 months later, we had some police departments that wanted to prosecute him. But by that time, we had already settled.
You got your money back.
Yeah, we already settled. And
there you go. Okay, so 3 strikes, you're out, Mr. Unbank. Is the lesson here, if I'm not mistaken by what I've been listening to, don't do business with friends?
That's a good lesson.
Derek and Atlas friends.
But I would say, if at all possible, just don't do business with other people in general if you have the privilege of doing that.
I like that. So don't do business with friends. I'm sure there's a lot of emotions attached, and there's a lot of, unfortunately, different ways you're going to handle situations that you probably wouldn't have if they weren't friends. Now, 2024, Unbank's been running for about 11 years now. I want to talk about the internals of this business. How many employees do we have running this operation, this massive operation generating $65+ million a year?
Yeah, so we have a little over 24 employees, which is pretty cool. I'd say half of them are developers. The other half are operations and compliance people. So
you've been doing this for 11 years now. Started out buying Bitcoin at libraries. Now you have a business with 800 plus ATMs, 24 employees, doing massive numbers a year. Do you feel like you are working a lot more than you did before because of the increase of liabilities and responsibilities with all these employees?
I'm actually not. I'm thankful for my team. Initially when I started this business, I was working 80, 90-hour weeks. Now I'm working 50, 45-hour weeks, so it's much more manageable.
I want to give your advice to the audience here who do have businesses right now and they're looking to hire. I want to give the best advice that you can have when hiring and firing. I'm sure you've gone through a lot of employees over the last 10 years. You probably had some bad experience with employees. What is one takeaway you can give to an entrepreneur out there with a few employees who may feel like they don't know what to do with underperformance?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I would say I'm I'm not the best qualified person to say to give that answer, but I would say that if at all possible, make a strategic plan prior to hiring. Lay out, what the goals are for this employee, their roles, and expected performance. And if they don't meet that, let them know once or twice. And if they continue, you have to fire them as quick as possible.
That's great, because I think we've seen a lot of companies in the new age since COVID, a lot of businesses have been open since, and small businesses have a problem with hiring and firing. Now, you've obviously don't have the key to this yet, but I think it's probably something you just learn over the course of the entire business. It's maybe something you never master. A few things I'll ask you for those out there with close family members. Should you hire family? Should you hire friends again? Maybe if there's a certain quality, do you think that hiring people close to you for a business that you hold dear is something that is advantageous or potentially could disservice the entire company?
Hiring the right family can work. Friends, not so much. I wouldn't do business or hire friends for the most part. There's maybe some exceptions to that, but usually never works. I would not recommend it.
I like that. That's powerful. So we know everything about Unbank and the internals of the company and how much you have done over the last 11 years. I want to say that I'm extremely proud of you, of the progress I've seen with being your friend for the last 10 years. It's amazing. I don't think you get enough praise for what you've done for crypto itself, but for servicing everybody in the United States who uses the ATM. So on behalf of everyone, I want to say thank you, Amelia, for what you've done, man. It's a really big success that you have here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tyler. Likewise, by the way.
Thank you.
I've seen you grow tremendously.
I appreciate that a lot. So this next phase, we're moving to something fun. I got a few questions on my phone that I want to ask you, and we'll get right into it. All right, so next phase of this is going to be a little mini game I like to play with all my guests. I want to ask them a few questions about oddities about their business, and we're going to see if we can get some interesting answers out of them. First one coming up for Emilio, CEO of Unbank. Crypto Confessions. What is the most ridiculous thing someone has done at one of your ATMs?
Probably the most ridiculous thing someone has done in our ATM is put $25,000 into the receipt slot instead of the bill acceptor.
So where did it go? You went through the receipt lab, it's gone somewhere.
Yeah, it went inside the hole for the receipts.
And then fell into the metallic casing.
Exactly.
Yep. What happens in this case?
So if it's within our jurisdiction, we have our own internal techs to fish out the money. This has happened many, many different times.
This isn't a one-off occurrence.
No, it happens at least, say, 11 to 12 times a year.
Absolutely incredible. About once a month. That's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge headache. And, if it's not one of our own techs, it's Garda or Brinks. Actually, just Brinks and some of the other armored car couriers that we work with.
Okay, the $1 million transaction. What is the largest single transaction you've seen on one of your machines? Now, you might have a limit, but have you seen structuring programs where people have tried to go above and beyond?
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. It's very unfortunate, but someone used 27 different phone numbers with $900 transactions to get around our AML KYC. So that was a nightmare.
I get it. It was mainly the phone numbers that probably threw it off.
Yes. Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, there was recently a pretty odd transaction that happened in Florida, correct? A little bit of a breach.
Yeah, the Cubans figured out a little glitch in the Unbank app.
Can we talk about that?
I don't think we can.
We'll save that for another time. It is an interesting story. We'll talk about this some other time.
Yeah.
Okay, the HODL Hall of Fame. What is the wildest story of loyalty you've heard from a Bitcoin ATM customer? Do you have customers that have been with you from 10 plus years that maybe send you Christmas cards or something, or any type of loyal customer that kind of goes out of their way for your brand?
We do have one out in Massachusetts. He's been a loyal customer of ours for 8 or 9 years. He's actually an older gentleman, and we kind of taught him how to use Bitcoin, and he actually sells rare books.
That's amazing. So you actually have some relationships with your customers.
Yeah, he's a legend in the office.
That is a beautiful situation to have. I mean, not only do you have these ATMs that are out there in the field alone, but you're able to produce relationships with your audience through your amazing IT and customer support team. What a great story. Not many companies do that. I don't have a relationship with Chase like that.
Yeah, I would recommend ending that relationship, Chase.
Chase, watch out. Crypto entrepreneurial confessions. What's one thing about running a Bitcoin ATM company no one would believe?
all of these social media influencers, they always talk about how ATMs are passive investments. And, whether it's a traditional ATM or a Bitcoin ATM, recently I think I saw a post talking about how Bitcoin ATMs are passive investments, and how he makes about 3.3K a month off this. This was some Solana shitcoiner.
Saw that
on Twitter. But yeah, that it's just not how it goes. There's so much that goes into it. It's a full-time job. It's not something that is passive at all.
And I would love to dive deep into that real quick. I mean, one of the reasons this isn't a passive investment vehicle is because we're not selling something that's common here. We're selling something that is fairly complex, even in the new age, that you need to understand how to use. There's several different touch points the customer even has to make to retrieve the thing they've paid for. So not a passive investment for all you online trying to sell your services to Bitcoin ATMs. You will be exposed for that. Altcoin madness. If you were forced to install ATMs for another currency, what would it be and why would you do it?
Another currency. I had a really fun time with Solana recently. I'm using this Trojan wallet on Telegram, having fun with meme coins. I think Solana is pretty cool. It's definitely a gamble, but it's something that I like to do from time to time.
So the Unbank CEO trades meme coins. Is that what you're saying?
Sometimes, just for entertainment.
Can we see an Unbank meme coin in the future?
No, absolutely not.
Well, that leads me to my next point. Life after Bitcoin ATMs. Humor me for a second. Imagine Bitcoin disappears tomorrow. What's the next big venture you'd start?
Oh my God. I don't know. I'd be traumatized.
Traumatized?
Yeah.
Eating Cheetos in bed?
No, not Cheetos. That's
no Cheetos. Sorry, no Cheetos. He's vegan. Vegan Cheetos. We don't know yet. Maybe.
I don't really know. I'd have to think about that a little bit.
Let's say Unbank sold tomorrow. Not something you will do, but what's life for Emilio? What are some hobbies? What is Emilio past Bitcoin?
I play tennis 4 times a week, so that's super fun. Sometimes I play soccer, although, you can get beat up in soccer pretty easily.
Beat up at soccer?
Yeah.
I like it. Does everybody know you as the Bitcoin guy, or is this kind of something you keep to yourself?
I keep it to myself. I don't really have a platform. I'm not huge on social media.
Yeah.
I just run my company. I don't have any energy to usually make videos or shit post on Twitter.
A testament to how passive the ATMs really are not.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a nightmare.
I'm sure.
Not suggest it.
Do not suggest opening Bitcoin ATMs. This is a competition he's trying to not produce here.
and not just that. It's just it'll ruin your life.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, next section I got is Bitcoin on the streets. What's the strangest location you've placed an ATM and had it work out for you? Do we have it in any random corner stores, maybe in a Chuck E. Cheese?
Well, I would say my second ATM, the one I installed in West Village, that was at a British lifestyle store.
British lifestyle.
So
let's hold on.
Sure.
British lifestyle. Why are you going to the British lifestyle store? What was the ploy here? Cheap rent?
It wasn't cheap rent. It was I have a really close friend of mine who was friends with the owner, and he hooked me up with a spot. It was just in a nice neighborhood in the West Village, called Flat 128. That was the business name. We had Elizabeth, that was the store owner. She sold a whole bunch of different English trinkets, umbrellas.
And you had a Bitcoin ATM in her shop.
Yeah, I did. I think that was definitely the most interesting place I've ever had a Bitcoin ATM.
And it worked out.
It worked very well.
Do you think that there's any physical storefront owners out there that there's benefits to having your ATM in their store besides just the rent that one may pay for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it turns your store into a destination point. It's always been that way. As it becomes more common, maybe not so much, but it's still a reason for people to visit your business that they wouldn't have had if the Bitcoin ATM wasn't inside the business.
I love that. Now, let's do a little bit of a comparison here. 10 years ago, when you were contacting storefront owners, hey, can I put a Bitcoin ATM in your store compared to today? Are people still as confused as they were before? Are they a lot less reluctant to deny you?
Yeah, no, I feel like most business owners know what a Bitcoin ATM is at this point. It's a lot easier to get contracts and convince them to host the machine in their store. Whereas before, I would have to explain it a little bit more. They wouldn't understand it. They wouldn't understand the benefits at all.
How much convincing are we looking at about 10 years ago that it took?
It took a lot.
Young Emilio on the phone.
Yeah, I was getting really good at sales. That's all I can say.
Still good at sales?
You know, I don't know about that. Yeah, I focus my efforts on other things. I think if push comes to shove, I can sell pretty well.
Love it. I love it. You became a marketer and a salesman by craft, forced into it for the ATMs. So you learned a lot about other different industries by getting into something so niche.
Yeah, I'd correct you a little bit. I'm not a marketer.
Not a marketer?
And I'm extremely bad at marketing, I would say.
You'll get good. You'll get good. Well, I think that concludes our mini game today hosted by Playbit. And I think that concludes most of our podcast. I would love to thank you, Emilio, for coming on and sharing your journey with us. Is there any final messages or anything you'd like to let the audience know? Maybe the Unbank app that you can download at the App Store?
Yeah. Download our app. I think it's really great. We have no fees to sell your cryptocurrency. You can get it straight to your debit card. You can get it to your Venmo account, PayPal, or you could withdraw cash from an ATM at 26,000 locations here in the US.
And I would love to reiterate this concept here. Find another business that's out there letting you withdraw cash from an ATM by paying them in crypto. No one else is doing it right now. Thank you so much for being a pioneer in the crypto space. Myself and everyone else as a crypto enthusiast, thanks you for your time and your service and being such a long-term veteran and committed to Bitcoin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tyler.